even if most of us aren't Linux kernel developers, we at least have a rudimentary understanding of the Linux kernel development workflow. All of the code is stored in Git, and all of the workflow sort of centers around this Git model, and for good reason, because Torvalds made Git for using it with Linux. Development isn't done with these modern developer toolings that most people are used to. You're not using, like, a Slack channel, a Matrix. You're not using GitHub, GitLab, and all of these fancy DevOps tooling. Whilst there is a standalone bug tracker with Bugzilla, which I definitely have to talk about because it's a little bit less official than you might think it is, most communication is done on the Linux kernel mailing list. If you have something you want to report, if you want to send up a commit, you will send it up to the respective maintainer, and then you have a bit of a back and forth about whether this approach is a good idea, whether this is a problem that actually needs to be solved, how this code could be improved if it needs to be improved, and then eventually if that commit is actually good, it'll be sent up to Linus Torvalds, who'll merge it into his tree. However, whilst GitHub is not even remotely important to the Linux kernel development, that doesn't mean there isn't a Linux kernel GitHub. So if you go to something like Google, for example, and you search up Linux kernel, you will find kernel.org, the actual website for the Linux kernel. But just under that, a GitHub. Now this is an official GitHub for the Linux kernel. It is owned by Linus Torvalds himself. It is on his account. It's actually an official repo for Linux. It is a mirror. It's here because if the main kernel infrastructure just completely vanished, if it all exploded, there's like an EMP, this would exist as a backup of the code. Now, considering just how popular Linux is and how many people have a copy of the source code, the mirror is not entirely needed. So they could just delete it and nothing would really be lost. But there's no cost in having it exist, so it just continues to stay here. Now, there is one thing that is fun about this repo. It doesn't have open issues. It's never had open issues. But it does have open pull requests. So that means that over the years, people have submitted pull requests, many of which get a little bit unhinged. One thing that seems really weird to me is that 2020 is the last time a new pull request was made, and it's not like newer ones are just getting automatically closed. 2020 is actually the last time a new one was made. But the new pull request button is here, and you can click on it. So, did people just suddenly learn that, hey, this is not the correct place to go? Like, maybe they did. I don't know why they would have. But putting that odd detail aside, you might notice that all of the pull requests here have at least one comment on them. And there is a very good reason for that. They actually did have a commenting bot. So this was first seen all the way back on this PR in 2017. Update typo. Updating typo of help verbiage. This is a very simple commit. This is probably someone who's trying to make their very first commit. They don't really know where they need to go. They don't know about the Linux kernel mailing list or anything they need to get involved with. They see the kernel is on GitHub, and GitHub is what developers use, so I go here. But with this, they got the kernel PR bot. This is a great addition, because a lot of people who want to commit to the kernel may not understand what they actually need to do, and the PR bot basically gives you a rundown of everything you need to know. Now, at the end of the day, you still need to get involved with the Linux kernel mailing list, a very different way of working from what you are used to with pretty much any other project out there, so it is still going to be difficult. But if you actually really want to make this commit, there is a guide on how to do so. And that bot is kept running all the way up to the latest pull request. Now, initially when this was done, the people who are here actually thought it was a good idea, because this was not the start of the pull request. There had been a lot more before that, and this was a really useful thing directing people to what they actually need to do. And seeing as though this was such a trivial patch, people were actually trying to help this person out to get this patch merged. But don't worry, not everybody is a good Samaritan. There are people that frequently visited this repo. Most of the people were not involved with the kernel whatsoever, but there were people who didn't want to see it vandalized for some reason. So, there are people who are going to vandalize it. For example, fixed bug where yes and no are mixed up. Everywhere in the kernel, yes means no, and no means yes for whatever reason. So I fixed around 44,000 files. Obviously, I am now a maintainer of the Linux kernel project. Let's have a look. The diff here is too big because it's a single commit. GitHub says that infinite files were changed. I don't think that's right, but basically, luckily someone wrote down some fun takeaways, changing synchronous to synchro yeses. Implements the simplest possible no write mode, i.e. it does nothing but return 0. That's obviously wrong. Implements the simplest possible yes overwrite mode, i.e. it does yes thing but return 0. Module author Michael Hunold. Module author Michael Hayeseld. They yes removed a queued state. inode to iyest. Notifier to yestifier. And it just keeps going on like this. They went and searched and replaced every instance of no to yes. Good commit. Appreciate it. Someone took it as a serious commit. You may want to read the bot's message. You need to email the diffs or get in touch with someone who can help you do that. It ain't a cool joke at all. Grr, bah humbug. This is so bad, I don't like fun. On to the next one. Rename readme to readme.md. Otherwise, GitHub won't recognize it as a markdown file. No other changes, just changing it into a markdown file. It's not a markdown file. It doesn't need to be marked as .md. Imagine trying to become a Linux maintainer by submitting a PR with 3 changed characters. That's actually a perfectly fine way to do it. Absolutely fine. The file is not written in Markdown, so it should not be a Markdown file. But if it does have an extension, it should be TXT. And sometimes they're in the holiday spirit. Merry Christmas, since Christmas is coming soon. Hey, that's so nice. Let's look at one of the commits. Create 12 days of Christmas.py. Special version of Linux, since Christmas is coming. I don't know if that's on purpose, but I love it nonetheless. But how about we make the kernel a little bit more modern? For some reason, it has all of these people marked as reviewers, but the more important part is in the commit. Let's have a look at making it more modern. Kernel panic to kernel bruh moment. That certainly didn't age really badly. Someone suggested kernel vibe check. Also wouldn't have aged really badly either. Pizza. A very generic update the security.c file. Hey, that might be a good commit. Let's take a quick look. Now you might have already spotted the problem here if you look to the right hand side. Updating it is also known as removing the entire file. Not a bad update. Remove the extra space character at the end of lines for each file. This, I think, was actually a serious commit. Because my email box can't send patches to the LKML, so I created this PR. I will also use my friend's email box to send my patch as soon as I can. These changes may have something wrong. I will also have a check and improve, so please have a check before merging this PR. If we have a look at the commits, this is like actually a normal commit. So for some reason, a bunch of lines in the credits just have an extra space at the end. I don't entirely know why. I'm sure they were added there for a reason if there are just this many of them, but this was going to remove them. And if they're not supposed to be there, like, that's a normal commit. Like, it's a very basic commit, but totally normal. This is just the wrong place to send it. This code very a lot fast. A lot very fast for old computer TAT can't handle quantum physics like my calculator. Thanks to this pull, now my Linux run in calculator. If it wasn't obvious, this is a joke. If you need it to be any more obvious, This is another one where the entire file is deleted with the addition of a comment at the bottom. Very obvious joke. Went over some people's heads. I feel like you already know, but if you don't, 1 is that it won't compile, and 2, there's no effing code. I know this has been fun, but it's really getting old now and needs to stop. A maintainer will assist you in removing your troll shortly. Okay then, okay then, okay then. Okay then, okay. Just keeps going, on and on. Here's a PR that has 3,400 commits. I don't know why, but it has them. Now, amongst this absolute train wreck, there are a couple of PRs that I'm pretty sure are entirely serious. Add ACPI ID for Lenovo IdeaPad 33015 ARR, and add support for LDAT USB EasyWave dongle. They are in the wrong spot. They should be going to the LKML. However, they are actually trying to solve an issue. Now, it hasn't happened in a very long time, and as you can see, probably for good reason. But my favorite times are those very rare occasions that Linus Torvalds decided to show up. For example, in PR number 17, all the way back in 2012. This was another PR that was totally normal. It was trying to add support for a certain device. It was a good commit. And, you know, if it was sent up to the LKML, it would probably have just been merged. But I don't do GitHub pull requests. I've probably shown this a handful of times already, but this is the thread where Linus absolutely tears GitHub apart and wants nothing to do with this platform. GitHub throws away all the relevant information, like having even a valid email address for the person asking me to pull. The diff stat is also deficient and useless. Git comes with a nice pull request generation module, but GitHub instead decided to replace it with their own totally inferior version. As a result, I consider GitHub useless for these kinds of things. It's fine for hosting, but the pull requests and the online commit editing are just pure garbage. I've told GitHub people about my concerns, they didn't think they mattered, so I gave up. Feel free to make a bug report to GitHub. And also, tears apart some dude called Joseph. By the way, Joseph, you're a quality example of why I detest the GitHub interface. For some reason, GitHub has attracted people who have zero taste, don't care about commit logs, and can't be bothered. The fact that I have higher standards then makes people like you make snarky comments thinking that you are cool. You're a moron. There was nobody in this thread called Joseph. This thread goes on and on and on and on. Torvalds going about why GitHub is absolute garbage, people disagreeing with him, Linus not changing his mind because he's right. But one thing I neglected to mention is let's hover over the creator's name. Open this pull request. Their first ever. Imagine your first pull request basically having the entire platform you're using getting chewed out by the creator of the tool that it uses in the backend. But I think this final comment basically sums up a lot of GitHub users on this repo. I don't understand how you make a contribution here. So we can see from so many instances, the answer is you don't. Read the bot message. I could spend an entire hour just looking at random PRs in this thread. There are so many more, but I think I'll leave it there today and leave the repo linked in the description down below. I highly recommend, if you got some time you want to waste, to go and check it out. So, that is going to be it for me. I hope you learnt something. I don't know what you would have learnt, but I hope you learnt something. If you liked the video, go like the video. And if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, LiberaPay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and there are some repos out there that are active that have comments this bad.